Hello and welcome to Setting Up a CIC, a Community Interest Company. Thanks for joining me. My name's Jenny Wildblood and I'm part of the development team at Vosca in Bristol. You may well be looking at this from outside Bristol, but you're welcome anyway. So today we're going to be going through quite a few detailed bits and pieces about what a CIC actually is and how to set one up. So I'm going to share screen and take you through the slides. Okay, so this session is all about the basic things that you need to know before you set up your CIC and about how you actually go through and do that job. So we'll be looking at what CICs actually are, when having a CIC as your structure is the right choice for your organisation. And once you've chosen to be a CIC, you'll then need to choose which type of CIC. So we'll be taking a look at that as well. Then we'll be looking at how you actually set up a CIC, how you apply to become one, the documentation that you need to have. And we'll end by looking at how to run your CIC well from the governance point of view. So CICs and their benefits. So a community interest company is a legal structure. It's governed by the Companies Act 2006, and it's a type of social enterprise. And that means that it's a limited company, but it has special features that ensure that it works for the benefit of the community. And CICs support a very wide range of activities. They can be tiny, little companies run by volunteers up to multi-million pound services. So when you want to set up a CIC, the sky's the limit. To set up a CIC, you have to have at least one director, of course, but if you want to put grants into your income mix, charitable funders will need you to have at least two, if not three, directors who are unrelated to each other and not living at the same address. Some funders have more complex requirements than that, but we'll take a look at that later. And directors can be paid or unpaid, which is very different from a charity. So some of you are used to the rules around registered charities. This is very different. So directors can be paid, and they can be paid for operational work, for being, for example, senior manager or running projects, and they can also be paid for the time that they spend being a director, so doing just the governance part of things. And whether you're paid or unpaid as a director, you have the same rights and duties as any other. And community interest companies have to apply to the CIC regulator, who carries out a community interest test. So you will need to provide the evidence that you really do have a community interest, and we'll take a look at how you do that in a minute. So what are the benefits of a CIC? As with any other limited company, you get limited liability, which means that in the event of the company winding up, you only have to pay a nominal amount towards the winding up costs. This is usually £1 each. This only applies if you've done your job properly. If you've done anything really particularly silly or particularly illegal, your limited liability won't stand. So it's not a license to just do whatever you like, however you like. But it does mean that your assets, your personal assets, are protected. As I said before, directors can be paid, which they can't be for a charity, and you do have access to some grant funding. There are charitable funders who will also fund CICs. As I said before, sometimes they will only fund them if they're set up in particular ways. And the CIC definitely has lighter governance and regulation than a charity. It's a lot quicker and easier to set up a CIC, though that isn't a good reason to set one up. And the reporting and general requirements are easier to cope with. But even though there is lighter governance and regulation, there's still the reassurance to stakeholders, reassurance to basically to people who want to give you money. As the asset lock and community purpose are regulated. We'll talk a little bit more about the asset lock in a while. And they are quick, easy, and inexpensive to set up. So is a CIC the most suitable legal structure for your activity? The other options that you might also be considering or have considered are a registered charity that's also incorporated. So a CIO, Charitable Incorporated Organisation. Very annoying that that's so similar to a CIC, but please don't get them muddled up. Or a charitable company. Or you could be an unincorporated registered charity, a charitable trust. So if you'd like more information about other options, follow the link here to some very good information provided by NCVO, the National Council for Voluntary Organisations, and also on the YouGov website. So there are some questions to ask yourself before you go ahead with becoming a CIC. Where will you get your income? CICs are usually set up with at least a good proportion of trading income in what they do. So you can also have CICs that are just reliant on grants, but that isn't a very secure model, and you'll probably find after a while that you've run out of opportunities for grants and you need to think carefully about what you're going to do for your future. So at least a little bit of trading income, which could include government grants, is a really good idea. Secondly, do you want to be paid as a director? You have far more flexibility with a CIC as to how you paid and when you paid. And how will the surpluses be used? So setting up a CIC will limit what you can and can't do with the surpluses that you generate by your activities. And it will limit how you can, if you wish, close and benefit from your company. So if what you really want to do is set up a company that has social aims, but also that you're aiming to grow and make successful to the point where you can pay yourself a lot or sell the company, then this isn't the right model for you. And it's just a little NB, but it could be useful. Usually CICs, if you have premises, receive discretionary business rate relief, but they don't have tax status, and a CIC can't receive gift aid. A CIC can receive donations, but you can't claim the tax back on those donations. So there is, we have information about CICs and tax. I'll share that in the chat, but I'll also include the link on the slides for later. So I can't stress enough that you will be setting up a business. So do your homework. Financial projections, is it actually going to work? And very importantly, market research. So don't just set something up without taking a very close look at what else is happening in your area. If you set up a CIC that's in direct competition with another that is already working well, then you'll only harm both of you. So have a think and be careful. You'll need a sustainable income mix. So ideally, a CIC is a company where trading income can be supported by grants to enable the community benefit to happen. May not happen so neatly for you, but it's a good idea to be working in that direction. So you need to do your market research well, as I mentioned, and you'll also need to understand how much you might be able to charge. You need to be charging enough for whatever you do, but you don't want to be charging so much that nobody can or wants to buy what you're offering. So you won't have the same access to grant funding that a charity has. Remember that fewer funders support CICs, and those that do often have very specific requirements. This is just an example. This is from Quartet Community Foundation here in Bristol, and these are their criteria for the type of CICs that they will fund. And they're looking to fund CICs who don't have a majority of directors who are also paid employees, and that everything that the paid directors get is reasonable and proportionate. So if you'd like a bit more support on the business development side, then here are links to a couple of places where you'll find useful information. The financial and business support from the Growth Hub, and the Business and IP Centre in Bristol, who run very useful events, giving you a lot of information and helping you to link up with other local businesses. So if you're absolutely sure you want to set up a CIC, that's great. But now you need to decide what kind of CIC is best for you. So there are two types of HIC legal structures. There's a company limited by guarantee without a share capital, and a private company limited by shares. Now, I have to say, if you want your HIC to be limited by shares, go no further, because I'm afraid we're great at VOSCA on BCSE organisations, but limited by shares. Share ownership isn't, except in a couple of very specific cases, something that we'd handle. It's just not our area of expertise. So if I were you, I would take a look at the previous slide again and follow the links for other information and advice. And just to say, if you want to apply for charitable grants, you'll need to be limited by guarantee. You won't get grants if you're limited by shares. So something you need to get your head around, both at this stage when you're choosing what kind of CIC to be, and later on when you're running your CIC and doing your governance properly, is to understand what the word members or membership means in terms of a company. So we're not talking here about people who turn up and take part in what you do, or about people who support you with occasional donations or anything of that sort. We're talking here about a purely legal definition of company members. And the members of a company in law are ultimately the decision makers. And you will have a governing document, part of your governing document, the Articles of Association, give the directors delegated authority. So that's how you have the authority to run the business. But just to make things even more complicated, there are two different models. You can have a large membership or a small membership. If you have a large membership, an example here I can give is a sports club that I helped to become a CIC, where they had quite a limited number of people who were people who used the sporting facilities they had regularly, and they saw those people as being very important, that they needed to be very involved in the management of the CIC. So they decided to adopt a large membership structure. And that means that the members are all invited to general meetings, particularly the AGM at the end of the year. And they are presented with all of the proper reports, and they get to elect the directors. And in order to be a director, you have to be elected from the membership. So as you can see, it's great because it's very involving, it's democratic, but be careful because you need to have a controlled number of members. You could set up the Hyundai i10 Owners Club of Somerset and have some control over how many members you had. But if you tried to set up the Car Owners Club of Somerset, you could be a bit overwhelmed with the admin. Remember, these people have rights and you need to have up-to-date information, contact information for all of them, and they need to be invited to take part in all of the things that they have the right to do. So the alternative is where you have a small membership, and that's where the directors appoint each other. An example here is I'm not director of a CIC, but I am a trustee of a charity where we have a small membership, and we have that because we work for people who have severe and enduring mental health issues. So it wouldn't be right or fair to expect that the people who we work with should come and take responsibility for becoming the members of the charity. So we make sure that they're very involved in all kinds of decision making at all kinds of levels, and we support our members to become trustees, but we don't expect them to be members. And since we don't have any other particular constituency that this could apply to, it was decided to become a small membership organisation. So just have a think about what would be right for you. And as I say, this is a very formal membership. So you could set up as a small member CIC, but still have, as you should have, really good ways for informing and involving your client group in your decision making and policy. So how do you actually set up a CIC? You've still got some decisions to make. And one of the big ones is your name. And you need to check the availability on the Companies House website. If your name is fairly generic, you'll probably find that there are other companies already registered. But you'll see, if you take a look at how names are done, you might be able to just add Bristol at the end, or Bristol CIC, or CIC Bristol, or something, and retain the core of what you call yourselves now. Or if you're not already some sort of organisation or entity and you're starting from scratch, it's a very good idea, again, to check on Companies House website. You will not be able to register with the same name as another company, even if you feel they nicked it off you. So hard luck. And obviously, we've already talked about you need to decide your type of structure, limited by guarantee, and what type of membership. And lastly, but by no means least, what skills, knowledge and experience do the directors have that will enable them to run the CIC successfully? Don't please set up your CIC just with people who are mates and who you like. You need to have a blend of people with the right skills to make it work. And if you are previously friends, if you know each other, you need to sit down and have some pretty free and frank conversations about things, because there'll be issues about who gets paid, how much they get paid, how much work they get out of this. And you need to have sorted out some parameters before you start working together. When you register, you'll be asked to say what your SIC code is. What a charming name. But it just stands for the Standard Industrial Classification of Economic Activities. And all this is a government system to classify what kind of companies are being set up and operating in Britain today. So you'll see on the Companies House website, there's a great long list, which the link will take you to. Just look through that and find the closest one you can to what you're doing. I have to say, in the voluntary sector, our activities aren't very well covered, so don't stress about it too much. Just find something that will more or less fit. You'll also need to think about whether you're going to have people with significant control, which I'll talk about in a minute, and have a think about your financial year start date, when you would like that to be. So actually registering your CIC, you can do it online, costs £27. By post, costs slightly more, £35. And if you do it online or otherwise, you'll be doing it via the government gateway. So that's an online registration. And that means that you'll be managing reports and taxes online. I have to say that doing it by post is a really bad idea unless you absolutely have to, because they don't have a great record of managing that at the KIC regulator. So online is quicker and easier and cheaper. So there are 2 documents you'll need to complete. It'll be 4 if you're applying by post. You'll need to have your Articles of Association and the KIC 36, the Declaration on Formation of a KIC. The other part of your governing document is called the Memorandum of Association. But if you apply online, that's automatically generated. If you're applying by post, you also have to complete the INO1, which is Companies House registration. So I said you've got your 2 governing documents, the memorandum and the articles. These are fondly known in the trade as the Memonarts. And your governing document is basically the principles and rules which guide how you run. Now, the good thing is that you don't have to write this from scratch, because it's a legal document and it would be very, very hard work. Or if you had to get in a solicitor, it'd be very expensive. But model constitutions are provided on the YouGov website. So just take a look at them and find the one which fits you best. They're very good. You can download them and add your name and make any tweaks to it that you're allowed to do. They're pretty clear about the things that you can change and edit and the things that you really shouldn't. If you go into the bits that you really shouldn't and start editing, that's when you could find yourself in trouble. They're very good models. They're quite easy to understand if you read them through 2 or 3 times. So don't, my advice, unless you really, really need to, don't start doing too much messing around with them. If you do really need to change them a lot, then you probably need to go to a solicitor to help you to do that. So that's just the Memorandum of Association. That's just the thing that says we, the undersigned, want to set up a company. But the thing that's most interesting is the articles. So the articles make it clear what you're going to be doing and why and who for. And that's a really important thing that you need to think about. You don't need to go into it in any great detail. A 1-sentence statement of purpose is great. So we have an example here: to provide daycare and transport facilities. That's the what. For the elderly and physically disadvantaged, that's the who. In North Essex, that's the where. So this is just the summary that goes on the articles and says this is what we're about. The articles also have the rules for how things will run: membership, appointment and removal of directors, voting, and you need to pay attention to it. You need to run your governance according to the articles. And if you get a bit lost and you're thinking, not too sure whether we're allowed to do this, go and have a look at the articles first, and that will be probably the place where you'll find the answer. So the asset lock that we mentioned earlier, the assets, so that's all the assets, so that includes profits and surpluses as well as any equipment or whatever you may have, are locked into the CIC, so they can only benefit the community that you've described and defined in the sentence we looked at in the previous slide. So if the KIC closes, all assets are transferred to a designated KIC or charity that you select as part of the application process. So you don't need to tell the other KIC or charity that you've selected them. It's entirely nominal, and you just need to state who they are. And you need to find another CIC or charity that is working in the same kind of area as you are. So, for example, if you're setting up a KIC that's going to benefit young people in Hartcliffe, you'll probably want to find another young people's organisation that covers the Hartcliffe area. That's so that, for example, if people have given you donations or grants, they can feel comfortable with the idea that even if you close, the money will still go in more or less the same area that they wanted it to. So this makes sure that anything that's given to the CIC and any of its profits are only used for the benefit of the community and not for personal gain. For personal gain makes it sound like you can't get paid properly. Of course you can, but the general thing is that directors shouldn't be paid more than the market, a reasonable amount in the market. So if your KIC is providing, for example, furniture upcycling services, then you would need to look around at other similar businesses and see how much they pay their people and match across. So you couldn't suddenly decide that being a furniture upcycler means you should be paid £300,000 a year. It's a pity, but the regulator won't allow it. And it also means that you can't use the facilities and the assets of the CIC to upcycle furniture, which you then sell yourself privately. Everything that belongs to the CIC just belongs to the CIC. So you specify on your Articles of Association which charity or KIC is your asset lock one. And at the moment, the KIC regulator says that the designated charity or KIC is permanent and generally can't be changed. I feel that this is going to change, not least because charities don't have to designate somebody right up front. And obviously charities and CICs cease trading, and therefore you'd need to find another one if you had to. But have a think about it and make sure that whichever organisation you decide to appoint is going to be the right one. So the KIC 36, Declarations on Formation of Community Interest Company. So this is the form that you complete that proves that you'll meet the community interest test that I said about right at the start. So this is the first part, and this is where, if you have your good sentence or a couple of sentences that describe exactly what you do, then that will be a great help to you here. So you'll start off by talking about who the community is or a section of the community that you're going to be working with. And on the actual form, this box is really quite huge, but ignore that. You can answer the question very, very quickly and short, and that's fine. And then in section B, they ask you to talk about your activities and how they will benefit the community. And sometimes this can look a bit daunting, but they're not asking you to do anything else than straightforwardly say, we're going to do this, and it's going to be a good thing because of that. So, for example, using our furniture upcycling company, we will recover unwanted furniture and upcycle it for resale. How will the activity benefit the community? Less items of furniture sent to landfill. Second, we will train young people in furniture repair and upcycling. How will that activity benefit the community? Young people will gain skills and confidence to enable them to enter the workplace. So basically, you just need to state the obvious and break it down. So each activity and then each benefit. And if you break it down in that way, it'll be easier for you to check you've got everything in. But again, you might just have one activity and one benefit. That's absolutely fine, so long as it is a real community benefit. So when you're registering online, this is where you go to do it. Note the fact that you're also registering for your corporation tax. So this is how you will submit your reports every year. But just to say, going back to the person with significant control, now this can be a little bit hard to get your head round, but PSCs is something which has developed from a desire to make things a bit more transparent about who actually owns and controls a company. So you can set up a company and say, oh, there's 4 of us running this company. Or previously you could, without saying that actually one of us has put in most of the money and is exercising most of the control. So people who want to donate or invest in or whatever in the company had no way of understanding that they weren't looking at 4 people, they were really looking at one with 3 people going, yep. So laws were brought in to make it a little bit clearer. So now if you've got somebody who is going to be able to exercise more control than anybody else, whether they're a director or not, you need to declare the fact that they exist and they're there. So there are 3 conditions, one on the next slides. First is directly or indirectly holding the right to appoint or remove the majority of directors, otherwise having the right to exercise or actually exercising significant influence or control. And number 3 is directly or indirectly holding more than 25% of the voting rights. An unwanted result of stipulation 3 is that if you have fewer than 4 directors, each of them will have to register as a PSC because they will have nominally more than 25% of the voting rights. So this will probably seem a bit ridiculous if you have 3 directors, but you always reach your decision by consensus. Of course it is, but I'm afraid the law sees it differently. And they say that if you have 3 directors, that must mean that each director has 33 1/3 voting rights, which is more than 25%. So you will need to register everybody as a PSC, as I say, if you have 3 or fewer directors. But once you get to 4 or more, then don't forget to change it. So now the final section, actually, you've put everything in, you've registered on the government gateway, all your forms have gone in, you've described your community benefit, you've done well, and up pops the email saying you've now registered a company. Hooray! But now is where the work starts, and not just the fun part, actually doing the things that are going to have the community benefit, but also the background things, the governance and the overall running of the company. So when you're a company director, you have, there are legal requirements for how you interact with and work within the company. So this list isn't a list of things that it would be really nice if you would do. These are things you have to do. So you have to act within the company's powers. That isn't difficult. You'll find the powers at the top of your articles of association. This is just a list of the things you can and can't do. And I think you'd have to work quite hard to act outside your company's powers, but still, you never know. You have to promote the success of the company. So when you are working on behalf of the company, you cannot do anything which is actually you trying to either undermine the company or make another company or charity that you're involved with, give them preferential treatment. You have to be financially responsible and accountable. And I must say, if money and finance and sums aren't your thing, hard luck. You're going to need to get your head round the money in your business, where it comes from, where it goes to, what it gets used for. So not just about how much you've got in the bank at any one time, which is definitely a good thing to know, but about how the money moves through your business. And if you're not too confident about that, a couple of things you can do. One is look for some training or support, just help you get your head around it a bit more. And secondly, make sure that all the financial information that you're given as a director is given to you in a way that you can understand. There are really easy ways to do this nowadays, and there's no excuse for somebody just presenting some absolutely incomprehensible spreadsheet. Since you are financially responsible and accountable, that means you have the right to say, this won't do, I want it done better. Of course, if you're be kind to whoever's producing your accounts when you say that. But you don't have to just accept it if you can't understand it. You have to exercise independent judgment. And I think that's actually a really difficult thing to do. Basically, if you think something is wrong, you have to say so, even if everybody else thinks it's great. So in a really well-run company, that independent voice is always heard and respected and supported, which can be difficult if something's come up that you think is a wonderful idea, but there's just one person going, oh, actually, folks, I think that could be a bit of a, and here's my reasons. You have to stop and listen. And you need to exercise reasonable care, skill, and diligence. And the word reasonable is very important here. You don't need to be a financial director or a lawyer or whatever, but you do need to just be keeping an eye on the law, on best practice, on your policies, on procedures, on your insurances, all of these boring things that in the end make the difference between running well and running carelessly. So every year you will need to deliver a KIC report with your accounts and the £15 fee. And fees will be applied for late submissions. At the moment, I think it's £100, and it starts from a second past midnight on the day that you should have delivered your report, and it just keeps on growing. So don't be late. And this report, as alongside your original applications and everything else that's of interest to the public, will be placed on public record. And HMRC will upload your financial records and use that to produce your tax bill if you have one. So your KIC 34 annual report, your KIC's activities and impact over the year, consultation with stakeholders and actions taken as a result, and directors' remuneration, or where to see it in the accounts. So you have the choice to either make it clear in the accounts what directors have been paid, or to put it into the report. The consultation with stakeholders and actions taken as a result doesn't need to be anything very formal. It could just be that you've stood at the door when people were leaving your events and said, "Was that okay?" But if anybody says, "Oh no, this venue isn't very accessible," then you can then say, "And so we've stopped using that venue." So don't get too tied up about it. And you'll also need to let them know if you transferred any assets for less than full value. So, for example, if your KIC has a minibus and you decide you don't want it anymore, you can give it away or sell it for less than its actual value, but only if you do so to another organisation that meets your community objectives. So our Young People's KIC in Hartcliffe, for example, has a minibus, doesn't want it anymore, but then sells it for a nominal fee to another youth organisation in Hartcliffe. That's fine, because you're still meeting your community objectives by doing that. But to sell it to your brother-in-law for him to run his business out of at less than full value, that is not okay, because that's nothing to do with your community objectives, and that is asset stripping from your company. So we're coming towards the end now, but just to say that governance for community interest companies, not the most exciting document, but really useful to get your head around this before you start your CIC, so you can really think about what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. And there's further information available from the KIC regulator, KIC FAQs. The Get Legal website has very good recorded seminars available on a range of things such as contracts, all of this sort of thing that can be very useful, and NCVO Know-How Non-Profit. And once you've set up as a CIC, I'd like to recommend that you join us here at VOSCA. We are a large membership organisation, and our job, as well as running training, providing information such as I've done here today, we also offer discounts on our services, which include a very wide range of other things. And we can keep you up to date with what's going on in the sector and help you make connections with other organisations who have similar aims and ideas as you. Join up with your brand new and you still haven't got an awful lot of income, and it will probably be free. So please take a look at the option of membership. And also, one of the things that you'll get through membership is discount on further training through the VOSCA Academy website. Link is there. So thank you very much, and I hope you found that interesting. and keep in touch with us if you have issues. Do get back to us for further information and advice. And we look forward to finding out about your kick very soon. So thank you and goodbye.